Well, hello and welcome, folks. Today is the final chapter of Hebrews. It's been lovely journeying through this book with you all, and what an ever important reminder it gives us of the centrality of Christ in our faith. If we ever set aside Jesus or the cross, we have missed the point entirely. All the churches on earth may just pack up and go home because we'll be wasting our time. It's all about Jesus. It's all about who he is and what he has done for us. As Peter declares in Acts 4, salvation is found in no one else. So chapter 13 rounds off the book of Hebrews in quite a different tone to the rest of the book. It's almost like the writer has like a bunch of extra thoughts and quickfire comments to make before signing off with a bit of a blessing. And boy, oh boy, there's a lot in here. Again, sadly, we just don't have the time to go through all of this thoroughly, but I want to maybe draw your attention to a couple of things. The opening line it's almost like a summary command that's then expanded upon in the following kind of 6 or 7 verses. We're called to love one another as brothers and sisters in Christ. As Christians, we're part of a loving community with Jesus and his example at the very heart of it all. And we see a pile of examples then coming in these verses of what this loving community should look like. Hospitality and generosity abound. Prisoners are remembered. Those who are being persecuted or ill-treated are cared for. Marriage vows are honoured and not broken. Money is neither loved nor craved. Contentment is the dominant attitude among the people. Godly leaders are followed and imitated as they nurture the faith of their flock. Wow, what a community this is. This is what kingdom life should look like. And that's a huge challenge for us. You could almost say that in our 21st century materialistic, consumerist, judgmental, secular, post-truth Western culture, more or less the opposite description would be more fitting. In our society, the church, the people of God, have a huge responsibility then to live differently, to live lives in such a way that points people to Jesus, in a way that honours God, where people feel loved and cared for and nurtured in their faith. Verses 9 to 16 then bring back some of the themes from the rest of the book of Hebrews. We're given warnings about false teachings. There's still an important reminder for today, because we all have so much access now to teaching and writing, more so than ever before in history. And we need to be careful as we expose ourselves to the teachings that are out there. Who is it that we're listening to? What theology do we allow to kind of wash over us and influence us? What churches or authors or speakers do we hold up on a pedestal without any kind of question sometimes? And then we're given a very specific example of false teaching to do with foods. And the point of this really is, unless the system of religion utterly depends on the work of Christ for our salvation, then we ought to reject it immediately. And the writer acknowledges that in doing so, you may become unpopular. By standing firm against false teaching, you may end up disgraced. And he then links that disgrace with the disgrace of the cross in verses 12 and 13. And the point really being that we're to endure the hardship or the mocking that might come. We're to continue to stand up against anyone who rejects Christ or justification by faith alone. And if you end up then outside the camp as a result of that, so be it. Because our ultimate prize is a city that is yet to come. We're called as Christians to forsake the world around us and keep our eyes on heaven, where, as Paul would say, our citizenship is found. The final section then deals with respecting those in a position of authority over you, trying not to make their work seem like a burden, but rather seem like a joy. And often, sadly, you hear of ministers being maybe off work on stress leave. Sometimes it can be because of unrealistic goals placed upon them from their congregation. Sometimes it can be because of broken relationships or bickering or just relentless criticism maybe. And it's important to remember that ministers are not perfect. We get things wrong plenty of times, and we are just people. And it's sad to come across maybe colleagues who are worn out and feel a real lack of support from the people around them. Well, here in Hebrews 13, the message is clear. Make their work a joy, not a burden. And finally then, we're given a blessing of peace to conclude this book. And this is precisely the blessing we need in order to actually achieve any of this stuff we've looked at in this chapter or any of the chapters before. Simply put, may the God of peace equip us to carry out his will. We are sinners. We're in need of help. We're in need of the Spirit to move in our bodies, in our minds, in our lives. And that's my prayer for all of you today. So thank you for being with us as we've journeyed through Hebrews. Tomorrow we move on. We move on to Paul's letter to the Galatians. So until then, stay safe and keep your eyes on the Lord.